Hey friends, it's time for Bible Teaching Tuesday. Pastor Fieberkorn here with you on September the 13th, 2022. Also, my 19th wedding anniversary with my wife, Angela. She's been enduring me for almost 2 decades now. So it's a good day. Anyway, hey, I'm loving this beautiful fall weather, cooler mornings and nights. And I really am enjoying the fall lectionary cycle too. So we started last week with First Timothy for our epistle readings on Sundays, and we'll be in that book for the next several weeks or so. So this Tuesday finds us in chapter 2 as we anticipate our reading for this Sunday. There's a lot in chapter 2 I could talk about. I thought we'd maybe focus in on these first two verses where Paul writes to young Timothy, a little bit of a protege in the faith, and he says, first of all, I encourage you to make petitions, prayers, and intercessions. What's the difference between a petition, a prayer, and an intercession? From my vantage point, not much. If Paul meant something different by each of these, uh, I don't know what they would be. A petition is just a means to ask. A prayer could be a prayer of encouragement. Intercession is to specifically ask for something for someone on their behalf. And then finally, he talks about prayers of thanks for all people. So we should not neglect thanksgiving in our prayers. Usually we think of prayers as, asking for things we need. Um, Prayer should also include thanking God for the gifts he's given us. And notice he says we should give thanks for all people, and then calls out specifically for rulers and for everyone who has authority over us. This is a tough one because depending on our political persuasions or convictions about what goes on in our world, we may or may not always like those who have been appointed in positions of authority and hence power over us. Sometimes we like who our president or our governor is, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we may have some disdain for a particular elected leader. Sometimes we throw our support behind leaders. But no matter who it is, they deserve our prayers. The reason for this is because leading people, being in a public position of authority, is a great burden. Yes, do politicians chase after their positions for money, power, fame, notoriety, reputation, all these ill intended purposes? They probably do. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with leaders. They're going to be held accountable by their citizens for how they govern, but even more so, on the last day, they'll be held accountable by God. They've been given much authority, they've been entrusted with much, and so much will be expected of them. And so, it may seem like it would be fun to have all that responsibility, but it's a great burden, and so they need our prayers regardless. If you like the guy or gal, they need your prayers just because of the great burden they bear every day and the weight they feel each day of waking up and knowing they're responsible for what goes on in our world. If you disagree with them, especially if you disagree with their policy or maybe their morality, why then they need your prayers all the more. That they would see God's will in how they govern, that it would govern in accordance with it. And so we don't want to overlook that. And if you've noticed, when I pray in church, I do pray for our world leaders often, not every Sunday. I don't want it to get too repetitive, but I pray for them. And when I do, typically not always, but I'll pray for them by name. President Biden, Governor Michael Parson. Why do I do that? Because it's not generic. It puts a name and a face on our prayers. It specifically prays for them. I remember I was at a pastor's conference one time, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, and I guess it couldn't have been that long ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And they chanted the prayers at the prayer conference. Whoever was praying, the pastor would actually chant. And I remember he chanted a petition for Donald. That was back when Donald Trump was the president. And it sounded so odd to hear the name Donald in my ears instead of President Trump. But it gave a name and a face to that. And it really caused me as a worshiper that day to hone in and think about that man and who he is and what he deals with and his strengths and also his many great flaws and how all those things sort of require my prayer. And so on Sunday mornings, if I say for Joseph, our president, I hope you see President Biden as a man who's in a position of responsibility over us and deserves our prayers. All right. Pray for these people. Why? Why does he especially call out authority figures? Well, they probably need our prayers just about as much as anybody we know. But they're responsible for our lives. And so we can have quiet and peaceable lives, always lived in a godly and reverent way. This is not the ESV translation, by the way, but it's quite like that. You know, the idea is you want leaders to govern in such a way that people live in peace and quiet and harmony with one another and are able to go about their tasks and live freely, worship their God, love their neighbor, and serve them. And that's not a given in our world. Not everybody wakes up feeling secure. Not everybody wakes up with able to have resources or the freedom to make decisions that are going to mutually benefit both society and their neighbor together. All right, so there's a lot there in just 2 verses, and there's even more. We could keep going, but the devotion's getting long. You've listened long enough. Thank you, God's peace. This is it for me this week, but always look forward to seeing you in Sunday worship, the highlight of our week. Take care and God bless.